What's that in there, Jess? Is that Land Rover parts? Is that Land Rover parts in there? Is it? You love your Land Rover, don't you? You do. You love your Land Rover, don't you? Yes, I do, she said. Yes, I do. Or mash get smash. Hello, guys. If you want to know what this is all about, go look at Defender 90 Orkney. He's just fitted Alice bought one of these, and it's bloody beautiful. And I made a comment in there about this. He said about it looking like an alien, and I made a comment about the old Cadbury Smash advert. And if you're my age in English, you'll know what I'm talking about. But I did put a comment on the bottom of that video, so you could always follow that link. Right, so this is what you've all been waiting for, guys. This is the build-up of the diff, and here we've got I've got the high range gear. I've got the low range gear. I've got the selector, and I've got in a bag. I've got the diff, as you can see here. I'm not using that diff. No. I'm using this one. This lovely box is from Ashcroft, and this is finally the bit where we're going to fit the Ashcroft torque biasing diff, where we're going to fit everything onto it, and then we're going to put the bearings in the casings, and then we're going to put the diff in the casings and get all the preload right and everything the non-manual way. If you look in the manual, it tells you should have setting blocks and a surface table and everything. I don't have those setting blocks, so I'm going to have to set this up the same as we did with the input shaft, and go from there. Basically, I mean, there's nothing high tech. It's a pair of taper roller bearings. They want a bit of preload. That's it. You know, it's not going to be anything out of the ordinary. So let's get on with this. I've got a little talk about this first. I'm going to show you on the bench, and then we'll get the box open and we'll start putting it all together. Okay, so these two gears here and the selector get pressed onto the diff. Well, they shouldn't be pressed on, they should just slide on really. This may need a little nudge, but the gears should just slide on, I think. This one must slide on because this one actually turns on the diff shaft itself. It has no bearing, it's just a direct fit onto the diff. This gear here has a sleeve, okay, as you can see here. And the sleeve goes in that way round, so that it goes in behind, it goes in that way, so that the plain end is towards the selector teeth there. Okay, now when I took this apart, this was extremely tight in there. You could turn it, but you couldn't move it. And what I found was this end, there was a few little areas on this end where it looked like it like been bolted down onto some debris or something, and it sort of pushed up an edge. So I just got my diamond file out and just cleaned them up. And also all around here, there was I don't know, it was like a little bit bruised, I think. And so I've cleaned all that up. You can just see, if you can just make it out in there, you can just see where I've cleaned it up with a diamond file just on the corners, just to remove it. And then it actually just slid together. You know, it's a very, very good fit. So you need to be completely dead square and just twist it together with the twisting motion, and it will go. Don't force it because it will lock on you. You don't want to be hitting it. So as you can see, it's quite a, there we go, and then it just goes in, and now that will spin on there freely like that. So it is oiled up, so that's all. That's something you want to look out for if you are building one of these. Make sure you get that sorted, because if you've disturbed it and you've pulled a little burr off or something and there's a burr floating around in there, it could just destroy itself over time. So that's that done. The selector, when you take it apart, mark it so that it goes back in the same orientation. You don't want to be sort of taking it apart and turning it over. I mean, if you've got a load of wear on the high gear side and you never use low gear, I mean, you could turn it over and then use, you know, you've got a new selector again if you like. But I mean, I hardly ever use low gear because I've never really taken this thing off road. But you can see here when you look on these teeth, you can see there's sort of more of a mark on this side than there is on that side. So the groove there is where the low side goes. And the other thing to do is make sure this stays the same way up, chamfer downwards, so when you push it onto the shaft, it's chamfered down. And then I marked, where is it now? I marked him there with some Tipp-Ex. You see there's a white mark there, and I put a white mark on there, so that shows me that's the top, and that's going to go into that groove. So we should be able to just slide it together. There we go, and just check we've got them aligned, and we have. Okay, so that's that together. Let's get the diff out of this box. Right, so here we are, got the Ashcroft ATB diff there in this box. You can see this is the Type B. When you're ordering, make sure you check out on the website and get the right one for your age of vehicle, if you like. Mine's a TDCI Puma, so I need the Type B. And if you haven't seen it already, I've already done an unboxing review of this. So you'll see how lovely packaging it comes and everything. And it feels really warm because it's been in the house compared to everything else that's been out in the garage. So we can put that box to one side. So that's our diff there, which is all bagged up. And then here I've got the fitting kit. These are the seals. These are the seals that Ashcroft supply. They're £4 each, and they're the genuine seals as fitted at the factory. So I went for those because, you know, you can get cheaper ones for probably £2.50, but what's the point in having cheap stuff that probably isn't half the quality of this? You know, to save yourself a couple of quid, it's not worth it. So here's the fitting kit. You get the bearings, you get the high-low seal, you get the shims for setting up the preload, and then in here we've got a bag, and we've got the 2 O-rings for the intermediate shaft that we're going to need, the crush sleeve for the intermediate shaft, which I'm not going to use, and then we've got the nut for the end of the diff that screws on here. So I'm going to get this out because I don't need the other 2 bits yet, so they can go seal the bag up and they can get put away with everything else. So I'm going to need the shims, the nut and the bearings. I'm not going to need that either. So let's get this out of the way. And then we can carry on and get all this out. So this nut, as you can see, it comes preloaded with like a thread lock in it. That's why it's got that red in there. We won't need them for a little while. So first thing I'm going to do is press all this together. Now I have chosen to put the gears on first. I don't think it really matters which way you do it, but I've chosen to put the gears on first, and then when I come to press the bearing on this end, I've got, you know, a lot of chunk here to use in the press. Whereas if I put this bearing on here first, that bearing is going to be there and could get damaged if I knock it over or anything. So I'll leave that bearing until last. Right, so it's all unpackaged now and we're ready to go. So there's the Ashcroft diff. We've got our bearings, nut and our shims. So we'll start assembling it. Now I've just got the old diff out and I've measured everything up, and everything on here is like 1/1000 smaller than the other diff. But if you remember, in the other diff, that bearing was extremely tight, and there was some galling on it where it was ripped. If you don't remember that, go back to the teardown and show you on there. So basically, what I'm going to do is start to put this together. Now, I'm not going to stuff all this full of oil now, because it'll just run out everywhere. Because what I'm doing now is assembling this. This won't be coming apart again, but basically, I'm assembling this, getting the clear end float and everything set up in the bearings in the casing, and then I'll be stripping it all again and then rebuilding it all after it's all properly cleaned and using sealants and stuff. I'm not using sealants now. So this is kind of a dry build. So what I'm going to do now is fit this gear onto this onto the diff. So because this is not coming apart again, I'm going to make sure I get some oil in there, but I'm not going to flood it because I really don't want it running out everywhere when I put it in a bag. As you know, I like to put stuff in bags and seal them up. But there's no point in just having it all flooding off everywhere. So that's got some oil on it there. I'll use paper for wiping my hands. I won't use paper for cleaning any gears, because you get little fibres of the paper will come off and get stuck on the sharp edges and that, so you need to be a little bit careful. Just check this is all clean and there's no burrs or anything on it. There's no rough edges going to do any damage. So that's going to slide down over there like so, and then that spins on there beautifully. It's got some play in it, but so did it on the other diff. So obviously it's designed to have some clearance in there to allow oil in, and also to reduce the drag, because remember this is just going to be sat there doing nothing most of the time, unless you're off-road all the time. So so that's a lovely fit on there, got some play in it. I would say that's a good sort of 2 or 3 thou, but I think that's the way it's meant to be. Right, so the next thing to do is put on the hub for the selector. Now this will either slide on, or it might need a bit of pressure to push it on. So let's see how we get on. Now I'm just going to check, there are no keyways, there's no false spline. That just sits on there like that, so that's all fine. This is really easy, isn't it? That's just going to sit on there. Just check you are in shot. Yes you are. Bring you up a touch. So that's going to go on there like so. Keep that one tooth lined up. There we are. I'm just going to check my alignment. Yeah, you can see I've got my alignment there. It's all correct. So that's that. And now this is going to go on this way up. Now is this going to be a sliding fit or a press? That's a sliding fit. So again, I'm going to oil this. Get some oil on there if I can. It won't let me oil the shaft. So that can all go around like that, and then this is going to go down on there like so. And this has all been pre-cleaned. I've been out here for about an hour cleaning everything. Okay, so that's going to spin on there like that until the bearing goes down and holds it in place. But I've put some oil on it because we don't want corrosion. That's lifted that out of there. Look. Okay. Now I've just thought what I'm going to do is put some oil in here. I'm just putting some oil in there, and I am using GL5 oil. And that way I know that I've got oil in there for when I'm turning everything. Right, so the next thing to do now is to press the bearing on the top. Now I need to support the diff. I'm probably going to support the diff here on the top of the Allen bolts, or I may even just do it end on and press the bearing straight on. So what I'll do is think about how I'm going to do that, and I'll get over to the press with you. See you in a second. Right, here we are on the press. Now I've got the diff actually sat down on these 2 plates. Be very, very careful. I'm just making sure you can see this. You can't see under there, but there's a spigot diameter there for the bearing to sit on. Make sure that if you're doing it this way, these plates are not on that spigot diameter or anywhere near it, because if you put any pressure on there, you're likely to damage it. So what I've done, I've got it just sat on those Allen bolt heads. Now, probably not ideal, and I'm sure somebody in the comments is going to say, oh, you shouldn't do that. But what I'm trying to do is force this bearing through the diff housing rather than forcing it onto the end of the shaft. So I don't want to chip anything, because remember, hardened steel, it's hard as nails, but it's also very brittle. So following the same rules, clean hands. Here's the bearing. Okay, bearing is outer is in its packet. Okay, same as we did on the input shaft. Never put the bearings down on the bench, keep them in the packet. And the beauty of this is we've got this long thread here to guide it, so we know it's going to go on nice and square. The other thing is I've just checked with the old input shaft bearing we've got here. I'm going to make sure that's clean because I've put it down. So we've got the old input shaft bearing here, and if we look, we can see that it's a perfect fit. It won't jam up on there, and it's a perfect fit in there to press this bearing on. So we're going to use this old bearing to press the new bearing on. Make sure it's central. You don't want it right over one side, you don't want it catching on the edge of the thread or anything. And then I've got this aluminium plate. It's going to go on the top like so, and then we can just apply probably not a lot of pressure to push this on. I'm just going to get it going, and I just want to make sure, because you can imagine that if I catch this bearing here on the edge of the thread, you can imagine the catastrophic damage it would do. So I'm just going to make sure that it's central and not touching that thread, like so. And the gauge is barely moving, So there we go. I'll just give it, that's a couple of tons. That's just to make sure it's going to stay down. Well, not stay down, but make sure it's there. Okay, so take that off, and now we've got our diff bearing pressed on, ready to put the nut on. Right, so now we've got the bearing pressed on and everything's all working hunky-dory. Gears spin freely, check there. Now we know we can put this nut on. So this nut goes on with a special tool. I made the tool. If you look back to my part 1 of this, I showed you how to make this tool. If you've got a lathe milling machine, that is. So I'm just going to slot that nut into the tool, like so. That'll sit in there, like so. And then we can put this on top of here and thread it on. Like so. It's quite stiff because of the thread lock that's in there. I'm just going to take this off and check we're not cross-threaded, because I think it would be very easy to cross-thread this, because it is a fairly fine thread and it's not a very long nut, obviously. So that's gone down like so. It's not quite down yet. And then what we've got to do is tighten this up to 72 Newton meters or 53 pounds-feet. Now the trouble is, my torque wrench, as much as I love it, where is it? Here we are. Where is it? There we go. You can see here, if I can make it focus, something to look for when you buy a torque wrench. If I can make it focus, you can see, come on camera, there we go. It starts, it's like, it starts at 50 pounds-feet, so it's right at the bottom of the scale, so hopefully it'll be okay. But really all it's doing is it's got to be pinched up tight to keep everything clamped together. So I want to make sure I don't rip anything off the bench. There we go, that's done up to the torque. And then we can get that tool off. And there we are, it's on there. Now I'm going to get my rag and just wipe off any of the excess thread lock gunge that's sticking out of there. And I'm not going to do any staking yet, because we've got to check some clearances. So I'm going to get it out of the vise, we'll put the torque wrench away, and I'll come back in a second. Right, I appear to have lost my nice feeler gauges, so we have to do with these scabby old things, but we've got 2 1/6 thou there. And what we've got to do is we've got to check the clearance in here. Okay, so between this gear and the hub, and between this gear and the hub. Okay, so it's basically the gap in there. These gears, I don't know if you'll be able to hear it, they float. Let me put the camera back on its tripod, and then I should be able to get it so you can hear what's going on. But these gears, if I can make a noise, you can just hear that it floats. So I've got to check that is between 2 and 6 thou. Now I haven't actually checked it, so okay, there's the 2 thou, and that's going in there absolutely fine. And then the 6 thou won't go. So I know that that's probably 3 4 thou, so that's fine. And then we can put that one up there, push this gear back, and then we get the 2 thou. And the 2 thou fits in there, I believe. Yes, the 2 thou's going in there, lovely. And the 6 thou won't go. So let's just for a bit of inquisitiveness, let's grab a, I did see one here which was clearly marked 4 thou, there we go. God, these things must be nearly as old as me. So clean them off. Do you know your fingers, your skin is one of the best cleaners there is. So there's a 4 thou, so I'll push that gear away. Oh, 4 thou goes in there quite easy. And then this one, yeah, that's a really nice fit. So the clearance on this side is 4 thou. Clearance there must be about 5 thou, but the 6 won't go in, so I know we're okay. If you are slightly out of tolerance and your diff's a bit worn, your gear's a bit worn, I can't see it's going to make a hell of a lot of difference, to be honest, because basically the nut is clamping the bearing, which is clamping the sleeve inside of this gear, which is clamping that hub, this hub here, onto the actual diff itself. So, you know, this gear is going to knock a little bit, but I doubt it's going to cause any real damage if you have got slightly more, you know, if you've got 7 thou, say it's up on 6 thou, be fine, but 8 or 10 thou, probably not, but I'm sure you'll be fine. So let's just get these spacers out of the way. So now what we need to do is stake the nut. Now, I'm a silly old Hector, and I'm an old man. So I do a lot of forethink. I think about these things at night when I go to bed, and you know, plan it all out days before. I've been thinking about this for days, and I'm not going to stake the nut until I'm actually ready to build the transmission, because you can count your bottom dollar. If I stake that nut now, what will happen in 10 minutes or just before I rebuild the gearbox or something like that, I'll drop some grit on it or something, or I don't know, something will go wrong. So basically what I'm going to do is not do anything until I'm ready to actually put it together, and then I'll stake the nut then. Okay, so basically that's the diff built up. We just need to put this bearing on the end now. Okay, so you can see here we've got the diff sat on the low range gear on these plates turned end up, and if you remember, I did say in another video, these plates that you get with these presses, they're always just a cast lump. So I've had these ground on a ring grinder, and then with my little tiny Clark milling machine, yeah, it's the same as you've got, Paul, from Grumpy's Barn. It's the same milling machine, a tiny little yellow useless piece of junk from Clark, with about as much torque as my little finger. I've milled these end plates. So yeah, if you are thinking of buying one of these little mills, they are not a replacement for a pillar drill. I actually gave my pillar drill away and regretted it afterwards, because they are useless as a drill. They've got no torque whatsoever. So so basically what I'm going to do is press this on with this. Now this is actually, you can see here, Willys of America 692. This is actually a Willis, this is a copy obviously, and this is actually a wheel nut spanner, exactly the same as the Land Rover system with the two nuts, and you've got the knockover tab in the middle. But this is one of the cheap rubbish things that's made of cheesecake, and you can see what I've done is once you use it once or twice it stretches. So what I've done is actually welded inside it and made it into you know, something decent, made it thicker. So but this end is actually a perfect fit for pressing this bearing on. So, and because it's a soft steel, it won't damage anything if it catches on there. And this aluminium plate, I think I've used this on pretty much every pressing operation I've done on this transfer box. It's been a really handy little bit of kit, that aluminium plate. So here we go, we'll just press this bearing on. Now we might need to do some repositioning. As I say, I don't try all this stuff out before I film it. I do it, you know, when you see it, it's the first time. Just going to drag that forward a touch like that. Just get that central. And press that bearing on, there it goes. I'm just going to check. It's worth doing, guys, if you are doing this, it's always worth checking that whatever you're pressing on with isn't catching on the edge of anything, because you know, when you start putting the pressure on, if it does catch on anything and starts damaging it, you won't feel it. Just want to check that plate there is okay. I've got my hand on it, just ready to grab it if it should fall or anything. You feel it's down there. I'll put a couple of tons on it. There we go, 2.5 tons. Pull the shaft away. I've got the dog here right underneath me, so I've got to make sure I don't drop anything on her head. It's not really a suitable place for a dog to be. I don't know if you can see her in the shot there, can you? She's just here. She's right there. You might see her nose. Right, out the way, Jess, go on. Just in case one of those plates falls. So there we go, that's that done. I'll just show you these plates while I'm here. You can see years ago, this side is, the sides of the plates have been ground, and then the edges, I've milled them with a little milling cutter. Just got them all squared off and everything. Right, there we go. So that's the bearings all pressed on, and the gears all on and everything, and the selector's in there. So happy with that, and it's a beautiful looking piece of kit with the Ashcroft upside down. It looks just as good with the Ashcroft the right way up, actually. So there it is, bearings all pressed on. Really, really nice, really pleased with how it's all gone together. It's beautifully engineered, the fit is perfect, and you know, for it all to go together and have those clearances turn out absolutely wonderful. Proper precision grinding. So big thank you to Ashcroft's there. Thank you, Dave. So what I've got to do now, the next part of the process, is to press the rear bearing into the housing. The bearing goes into the actual transfer box housing, and it has to, if you look in the manual, it has to sit down by 1mm. Now, what they suggest is tapping it in or something. I don't like hitting bearings in, I hate it. If I can avoid it, in fact, I'll show you something. Last night I took the bearings out of the intermediate gear, and what I did, I turned up this piece of aluminium that I had lying around, and then I've actually, you can see here, what I've done is filed away these corners here, okay, milled 2 flats on it, filed this away here, so it actually goes down in between. Got the 2 bearings in the house. I'll show you when I do it. It goes down in between, and then that actually sits in there, and you can press the bearings out. And I've pressed the bearings out without having to hit anything. I don't like hitting stuff. It causes burrs. You can catch edges and stuff, and yeah, it's just not for me. I like pressing things on and off. So I've got this piece of all aluminium. This is I think this is a top out of a fuel tank I made or something. I don't know. I've got this piece of aluminium here, and I'm just going to basically turn this down to the same size diameter as this, 1mm deep, and then I'll have a tool that I can just put over the bearing and press down. I know the bearing will be sat down 1mm deep, and I'm assuming that the actual flange on the rear bearing housing is also 1mm, so then you sort of squash it all up together. So I'm going to call that a day for this video, and then the next video will be part 4A, when we actually put the bearings in and set the clearances, because it's Saturday night, it's getting cold, and I want to go in. But I don't want to drag this out for too long and make it, you know, too boring or whatever. So I'm going to bag this up for tonight, and then I'll come back. I will get the other video done for you tomorrow, and we will get the housings we'll get the diff into the housings and everything, and then it'll all be done then.